Okay, now we have seen what is a transaction. So for us, transaction maybe in the previous session we discussed about the transaction is a logically combined together a single unit which includes multiple operations. Now at that point of time, we know that it's a transaction. Now what are the properties of a transaction which makes it separate from a single instruction or a different function in a particular program? Now transactions are having specific properties, as you can realize from the example that we are discussing, that I am transferring some money to your account or A person is transferring to B person. Now what are the properties? Generally we call it as acid properties. Now these acid properties are not the ones because its pH level is less than 7, primarily because acid properties have A means atomicity, B means there is no B, there is directly C. So C means consistency, I means isolation, and D means durability. Now, what is atomicity, consistency, isolation, durability? What exactly are these? They do not make any sense. But think of it in a logical term. Think of it, how do you realize that if you are transferring some money to somebody else, what needs to be done? A, it is atomic. That means either all the instructions are executed or none of them are executed. So for us, it is very important that all the set of operations are executed or none of them are executed. That means either the money is transferred and bank balance is reduced at mine and increased at your, or nothing. It is not okay that bank balance is increased at your end and not reduced at mine, or reduced at my account and not increased at your account. So all or none, that is atomicity. Consistency means what are the checks and balances which are there previously or laid before the starting of transaction are followed after the transaction. So what is checks and balances? Basically all the constraints which are there in the database, they are followed. Constraints, what are there? The primary key constraints, foreign key constraints, operational constraints, null key constraints, and various other constraints, that the total money in the circulation remains the same, the bank balance has some foreign key constraints and whatnot. So what are the constraints? What are the checks and balances? They are all in place. That is consistency. For example, if the bank balance has amount reduced at one end and not increased at other end, it may be possible it is violating as a whole the money in circulation, which is also constraint for this particular system, and so on and so forth. So whatever are the constraints, whatever are the checks and balances beforehand that are before the start of transaction need to be followed after the end of the transaction as well. What else? The next thing is isolation. Isolation means that whatever the result of the transaction is, the result of transaction stands irrespective of various other transactions executing simultaneously in the processor. Now what do I mean by that? It may be possible that I am transferring some money to your account, somebody else is transferring money to somebody else's account, and 7th person is transferring to 12th person's account, and so on and so forth. If I am transferring money to your account, it is impacted, the result of it, by somebody else transferring money to somebody else's account, then that's not a good way to say it as a transaction. So for me, even though the transaction will be working in concurrent fashion, mind you, I will let you know why do we want a concurrent fashion, but even though it is possible that many other things are working simultaneously, still I want that the result is equivalent or exactly the same as if it is the only transaction executing in the particular system. What else? Next part is durability. Now what is durability? Durability does not mean what we call as, so generally durability means, when we call as durability, what does it come to your mind? Okay, for me durability means the thing is durable, the thing lasts longer, the thing persists, it's not fragile. If I give you something and check, is this laptop durable? So that means you will use it and throw it and then say no, it is not durable. Or what else you will say? I will say, is the pen durable? You will break it, no, it is not durable. Is the hard disk durable? You will throw it in the fire and say no, it is not durable. According to basically some set of constraints, some set of limitation, the thing is durable. That means it persists even small amount of failures. That means even if somebody drops, many times you have seen in mobile phones, some reviewers do a drop test. That means it's very common for people to drop it. So in that situation, is the phone durable or not? Or it may be possible that you have a pen and or a chocolate or something else. There are different temperature variations in which that product works. So does the product durable in those temperature variations? That is one of the things as well. The clothes which I am wearing, is the clothes durable? That means it should not happen that one time I wear, next time I wash it, and third time and the second time when I wear, the color becomes changed. So that also is very important, that the close is not torn away. That is my definition of durability. What is your definition of durability? Just see for it. But according to the database systems, there is a possibility of failure, and that's a very practical thing. Now, when we are overcoming, or when we are coming through the failures which are so common, hard disk failure, power failure, processor may not work after a point of time, because these are basically man-made things, and they have their own circuits, and they have their own ways in which they may not work all the time. So at that point of time, if the network fails or whatever fails, that we are prepared for it. So if we say that the transaction is executed and it has committed, we'll see what is commit, but if it is finished, after a point of time, the changes persist. Small, minor, major failures still are overcome. That once I have transferred the money to your account, at that point of time, it should not happen that after a particular day that something happens and the money is not there in your account. So this is the meaning of durability. So again, to revise, all the transactions need to follow four properties: atomicity, all in or none; consistency, that means the checks and balances and the constraints are followed; isolation, that means if I am executing this instruction and if I am following the instructions with other instructions being in place, still the results are same. And durability means once the transaction is complete, then the results persist. It persists the small failures. So that is basically asset properties of transactions.